Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session called Renting in Boston. We will also go over a couple other resources for renting in network campus cities as well. So if you're not going to Boston, don't worry, you don't need to leave. We will definitely touch on resources beyond this city. My name is Mallory Perna. I'm the Director of Off-Campus Engagement and Support. I do serve the Boston campus, and I'm joined with my colleague, Chester Lee. Chester, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, my name is Chester. I'm one of the two assistant directors in this office. Look forward to helping you out today.
All right, perfect. And I believe we have a Q&A, so we'll get started and we will make sure to answer any questions that you all have. So as I mentioned, we are off-campus engagement and support. We are in 151 Spear Hall. You can reach us by phone, email, online inquiry. You can walk right in between 9 and 5. So we are a 3-person team with a co-op and a group of students. So we're here to answer your questions. Our partner office network housing is available as well. So this is the team that serves our whole network of campuses. So New York, Portland, Silicon Valley, Seattle, Toronto, Vancouver, London, on and on, in Miami. So please get in touch with them if you have questions that are outside of Massachusetts. They're going to be the best point of contact for you. So our team focuses on 3 specific things. We are here first and foremost to ensure that students find housing off campus. So apartment search, finding realtors, finding roommates, getting connected to reputable properties and avoiding rental scams. Secondly, we are here to help support you after you move. So making sure that you understand your renter's rights, your responsibilities, and how to get connected to resources you may need while living off campus. So you might find that you have an off-campus challenge, you have a question about the T, maybe you have a roommate concern. You can always come to our office for advising. So we are here to serve you, and we are very well versed in City of Boston rental laws. Lastly, and maybe the most exciting piece is the engagement. So we do have that team of community ambassadors. We do programming on campus and out in the neighborhoods near the Boston campus. So Mission Hill, Fenway, Roxbury, to ensure that we are visible and building a community among our off-campus students. So you do have a peer resource as well. And you do have a chance to learn more about community organizations and the history of our neighborhoods, and cool places to go through our team. Our presentation today is going to roll right through those things. We're going to start with the apartment search, move into your renter's rights, and leave you with some exciting programs coming up this fall. Okay. So how to get started with the apartment search. This is usually the first question you get. We're going to let you know about the 4 Ps. This is how we organize everything you need to know about the apartment search. So first you need to know the prices, right? So you can budget accordingly. So we will go over the rental prices, both the upfront costs and the monthly costs that you can expect when moving off campus. We're going to talk about the people involved. Almost every student has at least one roommate when they're renting off campus. That's one way to make it more budget friendly. It also usually makes for a better collegiate experience if you have someone at home to share it with. And then we're going to talk a little bit about realtors and landlords, as those are the people that you will need to get in contact with to obtain an apartment. So we don't have apartments, we connect you to the folks that do. The paperwork is a little bit confusing sometimes. So there's an application to say you want the apartment. Once that application is approved, you get a lease, which is the legally binding contract for the apartment, and the addenda has the rules. So we'll get into what you can expect in each of those. And then protection can often be forgotten, but it's extremely important. We want to make sure you are educated in how to identify rental scams, how to make sure your apartment is safe and meeting safety code, and that you have rental insurance to protect your belongings should anything happen to any of your items off campus, things like fires, floods, burglaries of that nature. All right, next slide. Okay, so let's start with those pricing items. The one-time expenses you can expect are first and last month's rent. This is a little bit specific to Boston. Not every landlord is the same, but this is a good way to plan ahead. So you usually will pay the first month of the lease and the last month before you move in. So those are prepaid. A security deposit is usually equal to 1 month's rent, and it covers any damages in the apartment. So you get the security deposit back when you move out, usually 15 to 60 days after you move out, depending on where you're living. In Boston, it's 30 days. And then a realtor or other fees. These are like almost like transaction fees to obtain an apartment. So a realtor could have a fee up to 1 month's rent. So you always want to inquire when you're looking at an apartment, whether you're at a showing or even when you're just communicating with a realtor via email or phone, you want to ask about their fee structure. So do they charge a fee? Who pays the fee? Are there application or credit checks that you can also expect to have to pay for? Additionally, most apartments are not furnished, so you will need to buy or rent furniture, and then moving expenses. So trucks, movers, things like that to get your furniture in and out, or delivery charges to get a mattress in, things you just might need to have a little bit of extra money put aside to do. The monthly expenses are as you'd imagine. So monthly rent is usually due at the beginning of the month. You're going to share that with your roommates, so you need to ensure everybody pays on time together. The utilities, so this could be gas, electricity, and water. Those will vary by apartment. So you want to make sure when you're signing your apartment, you know which you're paying for and which are included. If you want cable TV or internet, high-speed wireless, you're going to need to pay for that on your own. Groceries, transportation are kind of your living expenses. That might even include a dining plan to use money on campus if you wish to do so. And then renter's insurance. This is very affordable. It can be paid for through any common insurance company in the United States. So it's around like $20 a month, or you can pay upfront sometimes for a discount, but this covers all of your items if something happens. So we have had students experience off-campus fires or water damage, like from a flood or a broken pipe, and they need to buy a whole new laptop or a whole new mattress. This renter's insurance policy would cover those items. If you don't have it, you have to pay out of pocket. So very important. These are the average rental costs by neighborhood. We do want you to take some time to get to know Boston's neighborhoods. We will go over which ones are closest to campus next. You can see that the cost per person in parentheses does, get smaller if you have more roommates. Makes sense, right? You're sharing the total rental cost with 3 other people versus maybe just paying for it by yourself. So please take some time to identify your budget and figure out which neighborhoods and how many roommates you might need to live in the Boston area. This also goes for other cities as well. Okay, so where do students live? Almost with all of our campuses, students are trying to live as close to the main campus as possible. What that means in Boston is that they are in Fenway, Mission Hill, and sometimes further down below Mission Hill into what is called Jamaica Plain. So on the north side of this map, you're going to find more expensive rental costs. It's near our financial district, our downtown. As you go south, it gets a little bit more affordable because it's not as close to those tourist areas and downtown. So Fenway and Mission Hill are our most populated, followed by the South End and Roxbury. Okay, so we have a robust transit system in Boston. You're going to want to use Google Maps in any city that you go to. We find that it's very accurate for both walking, biking, public transit, or driving or Uber. Northeastern is served by 2 lines, the green subway line and the orange line. We call it the T. And so Northeastern has 1 stop that's open right now on the green line. The other, Symphony, is under construction. So it's still there, but you won't be able to use it for a few years. And those stops are only a few, 5 minutes away by walking. So the Northeastern stop is great to use. The orange line is also served by many buses too. So again, using Google Maps, if you find an apartment, put it in and put in the Northeastern campus so you can actually see all the options available, the cost of those options, and how long it's going to take. All right, we always get the question about which neighborhood is the safest, which is almost impossible for us to choose. So safety really comes down to choose your personal safety actions that you take when you're traveling in a city. Boston is one of the safest cities that I've had the privilege to live in, but I will say that there's some common, when incidents have happened, there's some common things usually that are happening there. So we want students to always walk on well-lit paths, right? To avoid walking alone, to avoid cutting through dark parks or alleyways. We want you in a public space when you are walking in a city. We also want everyone to be alert. These are tips that we get from NUPD all the time on the best practices for being safe. So not having your earbuds in, not looking down at your phone, paying attention to your surroundings. So if you do see something you want to avoid, you can cross the street or you can go into a store. The public transportation, in my experience, has been really safe even at night, but you still want to make sure that you're paying attention to your surroundings. NUPD has tons of tips, including a red-eye van. So this van will help get you to your off-campus apartment. It runs an off-campus route from the library at Northeastern to about 1 mile from campus. So you can explore this app when you get to Boston and determine if it meets your needs for getting to your apartment or if it's better to continue using public transit. This only runs during certain hours of the night, but has been popular in the wintertime. Okay, the people. The roommates come first. So if you're someone that's just getting started with your apartment search and you know your budget, you're going to want to figure out how to meet other people. So we have a tool that we'll show you in a few more slides called the Northeastern Housing Database. And we want you to take time to actually create a roommate profile, message other people, and find people that have similar things in common to you. They have a similar budget. They're okay with the same locations. Amenities and maybe lifestyle questions are going to come next, right? We want you to be with someone who's going to respect your lifestyle, that you can live together with your own personal preferences, whether things should be clean, how often they should be cleaned, and then any academic or subletting plans. If you're someone that's going to go on a dialogue or away for co-op, you want to be upfront with your roommate about that because that means that you might leave the apartment and have someone else come in your spot. So roommates are jointly liable. As soon as you all sign a lease contract, you're both seen as one entity. So it's very important that you're on the same page. So if a roommate stops paying rent, you're also seen as not paying rent. So we want you to be careful when choosing a roommate. We want you to communicate effectively from the beginning with your roommate by creating a roommate agreement. And we have an example of that on our website. Once you figure out who you want to live with and your budget, you're moving on to talking to realtors a lot of the time in Boston. Possibly you're talking to a landlord or property owner directly. Our Northeastern Housing Database has a list of realtors. These are folks that are hired to find people to rent an apartment. So they should be licensed. They should have good reviews. We want you to do your research and choose a good realtor because this realtor is responsible for showing you what's available in the market, collecting all your payments and paperwork, and getting you the keys. So we want you to choose somebody good. We want you to use the folks on our database as a first point of contact. Landlords are those that actually own the property. And similarly to realtors, it's important to research the property, to use city websites. The city of Boston has a great one. I know Seattle and Silicon Valley area have great ones as well. You can actually look up properties by address, see who owns them, see if there's been any housing violations recorded with the city. You want to make sure you choose a good property, and then you want to make sure that you have the contact information for your landlord. This is on your lease. So once the realtor gives you the keys, they're kind of out of the picture. You're working with the landlord now, or whoever the landlord has hired to take care of the apartment. So you want to establish a good relationship, have good communication, and ensure you can get in touch with them regularly. Next slide. All right, I mentioned how roommates were very important in the beginning of your apartment search. We do hear roommate issues in this office. So a couple of the top roommate issues I'd like to outline now so you can avoid them. So first and foremost is all leases, for the most part, are a full year. They're 12 months long. In Boston, they tend to be September 1st through August 31st. You can get shorter ones, but not much shorter. So once you're on that lease, you are all committing to that term and timeline. So make sure all your roommates are on the same page with that. Second, the living environment. I think a lot of times we pick people that we think we'll get along with, that we're already friends with, and that's great. But it's really important to outline, are we okay with guests? How do we feel about alcohol or substances in our space? What kind of noise level is appropriate? Are there certain quiet hours? And how are we making sure to use our common areas? What is shared? what's not shared, and how do we actually take care of those spaces with a cleaning schedule that feels fair. Third is apartment tasks. So getting into that cleaning schedule is who is like paying the rent, who's making sure that payment goes through, or are you all individually submitting it through a portal? Who's paying for the utility bill? Who's cleaning? How do we make sure that, not the same person is always doing the cleaning? So making sure that communication plan is set up from the beginning. And this can be something you talk about now and then solidify once you move in. And you can continue to meet as a roommate group. You can do monthly or weekly dinners or check-ins to see how it's going, because you can always make changes. But what you don't want to do is make assumptions and then not ask people how things are going. Because sometimes people tend to not want to bring up a conflict, which I understand, and then it starts to fester and things get worse and worse. So make sure that you're communicating up front if something is maybe not going to be okay with you, if there's something you really are looking for in your living situation. All right, next slide. All right, the database, I promised it, and we can put it maybe we can put the URL up later as we're chatting, but the Northeastern Apartment Database serves Boston. It does have connections to our domestic campuses as well. So the URL is aptsearch.northeastern.edu. And you log in with your Northeastern credentials, and then you can choose your campus. So you can use the drop down to choose Boston, Seattle, you can choose the Bay Area, you can choose Miami, you can choose Portland. Those domestic campuses are included right now. Thank you, Chester, for putting the link there. It's very easy to use the map sort feature. You can also do by distance to our campuses. So they're all like geolocated with our campuses. You can sort as you would for anything by price, by which ones are newest, and then you can kind of click them open and research more from there. You can also request guest access. So if you're admitted but don't have your credentials yet, or if you have a parent or family member helping you, we can get guest access. More importantly, maybe is an often overlooked feature of the database is the roommate finder. This roommate finder also works for all of our campuses, including the international campuses of London, Toronto, and Vancouver. In Boston, it also connects to other Boston colleges. So it's been built out even a little bit further, which is nice. So you create a roommate profile, you can search for students here and message them directly, just like you would a landlord or realtor on the apartment side. And so we recommend you create a profile and actively message people. So you can find people that have an open room already that you can maybe message them about moving into, or you can say you need a room, and then you can kind of build your group before you contact a realtor. Okay, and there is a list of realtors on the database as well under the resources tab. So make sure that you take time to explore this. It's such a great tool. We're also happy to guide you through it if that's a preference for you. Okay, we also have a peer-to-peer messaging board through the Viva Engage platform. This is a Microsoft product, so you actually log on to Microsoft 365 with your Northeastern credentials. You'll see things like, Teams and Outlook. You also have one called Viva Engage Communities. So this is an off-campus engagement and support page. Our co-op does monitor it and share resources here. It's great for last-minute housing questions, opportunities. If you are really feeling stuck, you can also post something here. It doesn't have all the sorting features, so you're stuck with kind of scrolling or doing a text search, but it's another option in addition to the database. Okay, sometimes, especially in Boston, this is probably true at all of our campuses. Your lease is going to start on a certain date. You might need something temporary before your lease starts. We do have a temporary housing list for our Boston campus on our website. The network housing team will also have recommendations of places to stay temporarily. One unique housing option is a homestay. So this is a form of lodging where you're actually staying with a resident host. So it could be a couple, a single person, a family. Many times, especially in the Boston area, these are a little bit outside our general campus communities. They're like you would have to likely commute a little bit in, maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But they can be more flexible with terms. They are furnished, right? It's somebody's house. You would have your own space. You would share a lot of the amenities there with the family. And and you might be expected to contribute in some way as well. So you might be expected to do some chores or help with groceries. So that's something to consider. It's very popular with international students, and there's a lot of families that are excited to host international students in our area. Okay, I briefly mentioned subletting before. I want to get into the times where students are most likely to do this. So, subletting is when you sign this lease contract for usually 12 months. You might find out that you don't need it for the summer months, or you don't need it for the spring because you got a co op in a different city. You can have someone take over your room as long as you have permission from the landlord. So you can look at your lease to see if that's true. You can talk to your property owner directly to ask for permission. So that's one of the key times where you would use a subletting scenario is that you are going away on co-op, your classes change, you're going on an abroad visit, and you don't want to pay rent for two places. Second time to use it might be that you need to actually terminate your lease early. Maybe you are going away on medical leave. Maybe you are taking a leave of absence for something else from Northeastern, and you're not going to be in class. You're not going to be in co op. You don't need to live here. You could, instead of doing an early termination, which is often not possible or very expensive, you could have someone take over your room. And then third is to find temporary housing. This is very popular for like summertime. Lots of students go places in the summer, but you might be starting a co-op, or you might need to be here early for something. Um, or maybe you just want to stay in one of our domestic cities in the US to explore more. You can often find a sublet and take over an apartment from another Northeastern student. Okay. For those of you not going to Boston, I didn't get a feel for the room. I see there's about 40 of you here, about how many are going to many of our other campuses. I mentioned network housing. Please take note of their email, phone number, and their website. They not only work with our network campuses, but they also work with our alumni and co-ops in those areas. So they're going to be able to give you guidance about relocating to any location where Northeastern has a campus. So while they have a few properties they manage in a couple of areas, they mostly are going to give you recommendations on neighborhoods, places people have stayed before, and give you some insight into what students are currently experiencing in those neighborhoods. So please reach out to them directly. They do customized one-on-one advising. They also have engagement opportunities, which they will tell you about for the fall, but I don't have updates on what they're doing, but this is what they typically do. They do a lot of connector programs to connect students to each other and to alumni. All right, Chester, this is where I kick it over to you if you want.
Yeah. You guys can keep the questions coming in the chat. I think I've done my best to answer all of them, especially the ones outside of Boston. Mallory just mentioned network housing. I put that link in the URL. It's also important to note that a lot of our non-Boston campuses do have their own websites as well. So NHR will be able to help you one-on-one, but they might also direct you to those specific sites. So I would go on their website and kind of look at all the options there. So rental scams, that fourth P that we talked about, protecting yourself. It's very important when you are looking for apartments to do a tour. Nowadays, it's very easy to do virtual tours. And if you're in the area of wherever you're visiting, physical tours. Now, the importance of this is to make sure that you are kind of going through, noting any issues, also making sure that the person doing the tour is taking the video of the inside and the outside. We haven't had, I'm knocking on wood, rental scams complaint from any students that have done tours, because what that does is it proves that there is a property that exists. The person giving the tour can't just have a staged room if they have to show you the inside and the outside of the apartment. Now, what to look for on the tour, we've provided a checklist on our website. Common things or that students kind of miss is checking underneath the sinks, inside the cabinets, turning on and off all light switches, flushing all toilets, and very importantly, the windows. Especially for fair weather cities like Boston, Seattle, you want to make sure that the windows can properly seal, otherwise you're paying a lot more in utility costs. So our apartment hunting checklist on our website is a good tool to use when you're conducting these physical and virtual tours. Now, some common red flags so that you don't get scammed is if you're kind of looking at listings and there's a much lower cost than other listings, if they don't provide any pictures, if there's no Google reviews online. These are all common signs of a scam. We have a scam checklist on our website, but these are also things that can be avoided if you do your rental research, if you know your average cost in that area, if you are working with somebody that claims that they're part of a larger company, kind of just researching that company as well. And then just making sure for each specific city, knowing the norms and processes. For example, Boston still have some listings that have broker's fees, whereas other cities do not. So each city is going to be slightly different in terms of their kind of rental norms. Once again, Boston, as Mallory said, most leases start September 1st, but other cities could have month-to-month leases. So these are just important things to know when you're doing your rental research. Now, in Boston specifically and in other cities, there are going to be checks that you can do. If you are working with a realtor, you want to do a realtor check. Massachusetts and all other states have their own database of all the realtors. You can enter their name and their licenses to make sure they're registered in order to kind of perform all the duties that a realtor should be performing. In Massachusetts, only licensed realtors can charge that broker's fee that still exists. The second is property assessment. Once again, every city will have their own property assessment tool to show that the property actually exists when you're going on tours. So you want to make sure the property exists and you know exactly who owns it. Rent Smart Boston, I have seen other cities with it, but this is a Boston specific tool where it notes if a property has any violations, like common violations, like too much trash when it's a move-in period, or if there's a blizzard, that may be like snow removal. Those are okay violations, but you want to watch out for health and safety code. Other larger cities also have this tool. You just need to find it on their city website. So these are just 3 common checks you can do before even kind of renting to make sure that you are not getting scammed. Now, scam protection kind of moves us directly into renters' rights. Tenants have a lot of rights. You can kind of be guaranteed legally that your realtor has to follow all legal practices. Your apartment has to be safe, sanitary, and up to code. If you have any maintenance issues, that they are repaired timely and effectively. Your security deposits, if they are accepting security deposits, are held in an interest-bearing account. You have access to all the utilities outlined in the lease, and you have the ability to exercise legal action without fear of retaliation. Landlords can never be like, oh, I'm going to charge you more, I'm going to sue you because I countersue you because you're going to court. You are protected under renters' rights for pursuing your own legal action. Now, on the flip side, renters have a lot of responsibilities. The well-known ones are obviously paying rent on time. Some lesser-known ones that have caused issues for students is making sure that you and your roommates keep your apartment clean. We've had a case or two of students reporting like pest issues, but it was found out they never took out the trash. So the rats were caused by the tenants because they never took out the trash. You also have to report maintenance. We've also have very few of these, but students didn't report a small leak. They didn't think it was a big issue, but it was actually a large leak behind the walls that caused a lot of property damage. So you want to make sure you report all maintenance issues because there's nobody kind of inspecting your unit on a weekly, monthly basis. Mallory already mentioned roommates are jointly liable. You're treated as one entity, so you want to make sure that you and your roommates communicate on kind of all the apartment living conditions and tasks that you have to adhere to. And you make sure that you read your lease and you kind of obey all the lease clauses. Trash pickup can be on different days on different streets. There could be different noise hours for different units. You just really need to make sure that you read all the lease term and addendum terms. We're here to help with that. We have a whole page dedicated to leases that we're going to see in a couple slides. But make sure that you read and abide by all lease terms. And then you can never prevent your landlord or their representative, agent, realtor from showing the apartment with reasonable notice for future rentals. They do have a responsibility to kind of rent it out in the future. You can't say like, oh, we can't allow anybody to enter this whole week. That's kind of an unreasonable request. 24 hours is the kind of the norm that we like to set. Is like, oh, please give us 24 hours notice so we can clean the place in order to show to future tenants. Now, talking about those leases, there are kind of multiple practices depending on the city that you're involved in. The bigger cities will generally have an application before the lease. And what this is the application is used to kind of run a credit and background check on the tenant to make sure that the landlord wants you as a tenant, because they also have a right to protect their investments. The application does not mean you get to rent that unit. Only a signed lease does. And this causes a little bit of confusion sometimes. That application is just used to run that background check, make sure you have no criminal offenses, make sure you have enough money to pay for the unit. Then you get sent a lease, and if you and the landlord both agree to all the terms and you sign the lease, that is your legal contract to tenancy. Now, in Boston and some other cities, they've kind of asked for more deposits up front, kind of known as a good faith deposit, to kind of lock in your spot. If you do decide to kind of pay this deposit before everything else, make sure you have it in writing exactly where that money is going towards. If you have a paper trail, if you have an email trail, and something comes up, then you can at least use that in small claims court if there are issues you need to pursue. However, we don't recommend depositing anything before seeing the unit and signing a lease. So leases have to include all logistical information. So anything that's a number, dates, addresses, contact information, amount you should be paying, what day of the month you're paying the rent. Uh, all that information has to be in the lease. It's very important to note that you know who to contact if there's maintenance concerns or safety concerns, just in case. So that information has to be in the lease. Now, some of the information that changes from unit to unit is kind of the subletting policy, when to take the trash out, as I mentioned. If there's a fee for noise violations, how to report pests, mold, and anything like that. If it allows pets, smoking, guests, and other things like that. Now, not all units guarantee parking. Um, City to city depends on also kind of like if you're using gas or AC for utilities. So making sure you read all those clauses in your lease. When you are moving in, we also want to make sure that you are completing an apartment condition form. What this does is it protects your security deposit. If there's already issues with the apartment when you move in, you note it on the apartment condition form, you take pictures so that at the end of your lease term, it's not deducted from your security deposit. Now, some Boston specific legal and illegal clauses that you want to make sure um, is that there can be cleaning, noise, and trash fees if you don't properly kind of maintain the unit. Sublet and room change fees. This is a big one because a lot of leases, if they allow subletting or roommate changes, there will be a small fee charged with running an additional background check usually. As is clauses, which means that the unit is not going to undergo major renovations after you tour it before you move in. So if you notice like paint chips on the wall, they may or may not like repaint it before you move in. Jointly liable, as we mentioned, all roommates are treated as one entity. Guest restrictions, there are lots of units that prevent having additional guests. Right of entry, making sure that the landlord can communicate with you when they need to show a unit. Now, some illegal clauses is pest fees. If they're not caused by the tenants, they can't charge you for the removal of pests. Same with snow removal of public walkways. Private parking spots are a different issue, but public walkways have to be removed and maintained by the landlord. Cleaning service requirement. Now, this is Massachusetts specific. Under Massachusetts state law, the leases cannot have a clause that states you need to hire a professional cleaning service at the end of the lease term. and routine maintenance fees. They cannot charge you for normal wear and tear. Now, negotiation. Um, you want to make sure you ask. It never hurts to ask about things, but how to ask is something that students commonly don't do. So, as we mentioned a lot earlier, make sure you do your research. Something you could say is like you've toured like 8 units, you noticed that there were 2 others that were $300 cheaper. Could they reduce the rent by 300? The worst they can say is no. So you want to make sure you ask when you're negotiating about rent. You could also negotiate clause terms. Like, for example, if you know you'll be subletting next summer, can the landlord waive the subletting fee? Um, and then making sure that you don't sign right away. A lot of realtors and landlords will be like, oh, this unit will be gone in like 2 minutes. Making sure that you wait, you don't kind of adhere to their sales tactics. Make sure you're looking at multiple units and not just one. So these are just some quick negotiation strategies you can use when you are searching for your apartment. And in Boston specific, there are ordinances about the number of people that can live. Other cities have different numbers, so I would definitely check for like Seattle and New York about the kind of the max number of people per square foot that's allowed in a space. Parking restrictions, as I mentioned before, each street will be different, and trash as well. Now, our Lease Genius page, as we mentioned, is here to help you with your leases. We want you to make sure you read the specific terms of your lease. So one thing we're going to say a lot if you send us a full lease is if you agree to all the lease terms, then the lease is okay, because a lease is a legally binding contract. So what you want to do is you want to go through those terms, and if you have a specific clause like clause 16 that you have a question about, we can help you break that down. But otherwise, full leases, the longer they are, generally the more detailed they are, which is good. But you want to make sure that you read each term, because if you sign it, you agree to it, and that is a legally binding contract. Now, city and state resources that exist in kind of every city. Each city is going to have their own inspectional services department. They are generally free. And if you have issues, generally larger or mid to larger scale issues like pests, leaks, safety concerns, you want to contact the inspectional services of that city to make sure that a report is filed. What this does is the city has a way of kind of triggering investigations into the landlord and property if they've had a lot of violations in the past, to make sure that your security deposit, A, but also like your tenancy is protected. The Office of the Attorney General, once again, each state has one. They investigate bad business practices. For example, if a realtor took a lot of your security deposit up front, but didn't pay it to the landlord, or they took it for kind of what they claim a fee, you're going to want to file a report with the Office of the Attorney General, because that is an illegal business practice. Small claims court, each state will have a different amount. In Massachusetts, it's under $7,000. They're usually used for financial disputes, roommates not paying rent, landlords not returning security deposit. So small claims court is going to where you want to go for those issues. And then housing court will be used for eviction type cases. Once again, each city and state is going to have one of these. So you'll want to look at whichever one you're going to be in, and if you need the resource, to make sure you use it. Now, as we did with roommates, the top 3 renting mistakes we've seen in the past few years is students not reading about the early termination or subletting clause. They sign a full year contract and then find out later that they can't terminate early nor sublet, so they're stuck paying that full year of rent. Make sure you read your lease. I think that's the the big takeaway here is make sure you read every clause in your lease. Second, jointly and severally liable. Roommates, discuss. Make sure that you're comfortable living with each other. We've had some very odd cases where we've had some weird allergies to food, and a roommate brought it in, caused a roommate dispute, but that could have easily prevented if they communicated with each other. And then thirdly, make sure you tour that unit before depositing. We've had students that said like, oh, I didn't like how small the windows were. It's like, well, you could have noticed that before you move in if you wanted more natural light. So just making sure that you do that virtual or physical tour before signing anything or depositing any money. Now, this is more for Boston, but you can also sign up for our newsletter to get tips and tricks about renting. But we want to make sure students are engaged off campus. In Boston, we have the weekly cleanup crew on Sundays, both the fall and the spring semester in Fenway and Mission Hill. It's a good way to just kind of meet other students, enjoy some donuts and coffee, and help do a little community service around the neighborhood. Um, it's very popular. It usually fills up, so we highly recommend kind of signing up for this whenever you know you have a free Sunday and want to meet other people. In addition, we do community walks, learning about kind of the localities around Northeastern, a little bit of the history, which restaurants are good, so fun stuff like that. We work with the city during our end of the year cleanup crew. We help with parks, gardens, walkways, so some major places working with the city. But we also have socials off campus at local community centers. This one's a paint night. We've had kind of dance classes, um, flower pot, oh, I can't even say, potting, I guess, other events as well at kind of local community centers. In addition, we have a team of 9 student community ambassadors. They are students just like yourselves that have rented off campus. They will give you kind of their experience, tips and tricks. If you ever want to reach out to them, you can kind of talk to our office. So we have students that have been where you've been to also kind of give their side of the story. Now, making sure that you're also representing Northeastern when you're living off campus, just some general guidelines besides abiding by your kind of lease terms, kind of just meet your neighbors, making sure that you know who they are because not everybody's a student. You kind of discuss noise levels. You know that if there's kind of like a neighborhood garden, like what to do or not do. Trash and recycling, as I mentioned, I think this is the third time now, making sure each street has different trash guidelines that you're following them. Being safe off campus, if you see anything suspicious, make sure you report it. And then just getting involved. There's like run groups, there's like park cleanups, like everything off campus is there to make sure that you have a better experience when you're living off campus. And as I mentioned, you should sign up for our newsletter for lots of good information and follow our social media. We do a lot of fun stuff on there as well. And yeah, I think that is it. Once again, we are off-campus engagement and support. We'll leave our contact information up. But we will open it up to, I guess, questions we haven't gotten to yet. I think.
Yeah, I think we've
Yeah.
answered most of them, but it might be good to maybe highlight some of these since not everyone can see them. So there's a question about homestays. We do have a list on our website of specific homestay companies. So if you are going to offcampus.northeastern.edu, you're going to find a temporary housing page that's available to you with homestays. Network housing will also have recommendations for short-term housing. So if you contact the network housing team, they will say, oh, in Miami for 3 months, here's some places have stayed short-term. We also had a question about, is the roommate agreement required? Is this included with a lease? And it is usually not. So most landlords are only caring about like that you're taking care of the apartment, that you're paying them money. The contract is written to protect, their asset and what they're hoping to get out of this relationship. The roommate agreement is between you and who you live with. So while it is not required, it's highly recommended. Because it can avoid a lot of confusion later, and it always gives you all something to come back to say like, oh, we agreed to this, but that's not what's happening. So we can make adjustments or we can, go back to this, but it makes it so no one's surprised, I think, about any future concerns that are brought up because it was all discussed previously. I don't see anything else that was unanswered.
This presentation will be available. I think there's a new question about that. Audrey's going to send that to you guys after it's done.
And we do have videos on our website on specific topics. We have previous presentations that Chester has given. So if you're looking for more insight, that's a good way to go. We also do those virtual bookings that you can see here on the lower right-hand side. So if you'd like to meet with one of us one-on-one to ask very specific questions, or we can do a screen share with you to go over something, we're happy to do that. You can do the same with the Seattle campus. Yep. So I saw that question as well. Thanks, Chester, for answering it. Network housing also has virtual bookings.
Rules change. I'm not sure I understand that question. Rules don't really change that often because each state has laws about kind of tenancy, both kind of like rules and responsibilities. So let's see, Marie, if you want to expand on that question a little bit, we'll be happy to answer. Oh, laws. Okay. Laws don't change that often. And they will announce it with kind of like a grace period, usually over I would say like a 1-year term. So there's a lot of leg room for like not signing a lease or signing a lease once you know about laws that are coming into place. They'll announce the date that it's supposed to start. And then if a lease is grandfathered into the old or new or old process. For renters insurance, a lot of the large kind of insurance companies offer it, Geico, State Farm, Progressive, but I would look into specifically where you're renting from. Maybe even ask the realtor or landlord if they have a preference. It's generally about the same price, like $20 a month, I think, by my last estimate. So kind of look into it. If you already have insurance through a insurance company for your car, or if your parents have it, you can also ask if there's like a bundle deal that you can do. We know some students have done that. So that's, I think, the best way to look for insurance. We have a sample lease on our website. So it is, Massachusetts at least has a Greater Boston Real Estate Board sample lease that you can look at. The sample lease itself doesn't change much. What's important to know about kind of the lease is the addendum. As we mentioned, each unit will have different addenda. For example, if they allow subletting, what days to take out the trash. So that all that information will be on our website for you to review.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if you're not going to Boston, if you're going to another state, you can also like Google search, a standard lease for California. And usually most states have like a real estate affiliation, a board that creates standardized documents, like Chester said, that don't change. I will say if you're thinking about this from a scam perspective, most scam leases like are very disorganized, missing information, have typos for the most part. I think, of course, scammers are getting a little bit better, but usually there's a couple red flags in the lease that would tip you off. It's always good to know what a standard document looks like. Oh, yes, we didn't address the credit history question, but we are used to that question. I can also put our international student guide in the chat. But international students, it's important to let realtors and landlords know up front that you're an international student because they can look at your funding documents. So your I-20, there are landlords maybe that would request like actual bank statements to show that you have the funds to pay for an apartment. There could be a very strict landlord that says they only want someone with a domestic cosigner. And in that case, you're just going to have to work with somebody else. So it really benefits you to be upfront about your status, that you are an international student through Northeastern, and what documents you do have, and so that you can provide all that. We have a filter on the database too of international student friendly apartments, if that's helpful. So we also have this question about joint leases or individual leases. It depends usually. I know that that's not an easy answer. On the database, you can filter by unit, which is like the whole apartment with all the rooms, or by room, because there are some that are individual room rentals. That's a little bit more rare, specifically in Boston. But most leases are really written jointly. Very few places, because it requires a different permitting license, can do individual leases.
At least in Massachusetts. I know California has more popular kind of like split leases, but.
And if that's unclear in your documents, it's really helpful to make sure you get clarity around any of that so you know what you're responsible for. It'd be a shame to have like a $4,000 a month lease with just one name on it, right? So it's like you want to make sure that you're not being tied to some, ridiculous amount of money, and that it's tied to everybody. I have not heard of this question, Chester. I've not heard of any student ever needing a lease document during immigration. You will be required by the, OGS when you're arriving here or prior to arrival to provide like your address that you're staying at in the US. But that's not necessarily, you don't have to upload a lease to do that. You would just provide the address, and that's all
Yeah.
through the university, not through somebody else.
Yeah, they can't require a lease because you legally don't need a lease. You could be staying at a hotel for like months. So I guess the context of that lease question would really depend on the answer, but they can't require you, at least not for immigration status, to the best of my knowledge.
I also see that we have a question about housing in Oakland. Northern California is a challenging or competitive rental market similar to Boston. So in that case, I would recommend emailing NHR directly, just because they work with students there all the time. So they're going to know about things that we don't know about in Boston, but they're also going to be able to provide you contacts for places that maybe are there that just aren't listing on the database. So they can say, oh, there's this other great building that students stay at. So I would leverage their expertise. They also are in touch with like every administrative group on the Oakland campus too. So like they're able to kind of come up with some recommendations that are a little bit more customized to you. Just going to pop our international student guide for Boston into the chat for everybody as we're kind of slowing down here.
Okay, so a question about June Home's tenant requirements. Okay. So what you want to do in cases like this, when there's a tenant requirement, is, as Mallory kind of hinted to a little before with the guarantor, you want to talk to them directly. Landlords and property owners can rent to whoever they want, so they don't have to rent to anybody they don't want to. So that's kind of the legal basis of it. They can deny rentals to anybody, which is why the communication is such an important part. A lot of them that know kind of the city and work with international students will often like kind of look at salary statements, scholarships, and everything to see if you're a good fit for what they want to rent. So you do need to talk to them on an individual basis. We do have a lot of students that do rent from June homes. So they know kind of students are international and on a scholarship. So you want to talk to them directly. So you can definitely hire a third party to be a guarantor. There are a lot of companies that do it, as well as some banks. They just happen to be more expensive. So that is definitely something you can do. We have had students that do it. Um, we still recommend talking to kind of where you're renting from first to see if they'll accept something else rather than a guarantor. That way you can save yourself a little money.
Just so everyone knows the answer, it's good to know that the Northeastern Housing Database does have that roommate profile feature for all campuses. So when you create your profile, you select which Northeastern campus you're a part of. You can also filter profiles by campus. So if you're going to Seattle, you would want to go to the advanced filters and only see other students from Seattle. And that's going to make it to go from 500 people to like 5. It's going to make it a lot easier because it's a smaller population at that campus. Thank you for the positive feedback here about the presentation. We have time for one more question if anyone wants to pop any last thing in. Otherwise, you can absolutely send us your questions by phone, email, or book extra time with us as you get started. Thank you for joining us today, and welcome to Northeastern.